The member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. I want to reflect on the Premier's performance in question time today, which I thought was an extraordinary example of spin, dissembling and post hoc justifications. I think that the extraordinary series of commissions and inquiries and coronial inquests and disturbing betrayals of faith that the community has in the government's handling of child protection over the last 14 years has traumatised many in the community, but it has led to a series of responses in the Parliament today that have really been nothing more than spin, dissembling and post hoc justifications. We've had an interim set of recommendations from Royal Commissioner Nyland, which has in fact finally led the government, years and years after everyone else in the community knew that it was in the best interests of South Australia and the best interests of our vulnerable children, to finally remove our Child Protection Agency from the Education Department. An experiment, a social experiment of the Premier's own devising that has failed the people of South Australia and has failed our most vulnerable children. And ever since in the 2011-12 changeover period, when the Premier moved from the Education Department to the Premier's seat, which he now occupies, and was able to put in place his social experiment, we have seen for years an extraordinary series of failings as this department, this critical agency that needs its own focus, that needs its own minister, for whom this is their most important task, to provide that oversight and make sure they are doing their job, Deputy Speaker. We have seen the Premier, because it was his idea, because if it was of his own devising, continually justify it. He called it a retrograde step when the opposition said in 2013 that if elected to government with the support, as we had, of 53% of the community, we would have removed Families SA from the Education Department. And for 3 years, the Premier has been stridently arguing against it, And then today, when we asked our first question on this important issue, why has it taken so long for the government to recognise this problem? The Premier's response was to blame the opposition. He said that we created the culture, we created negativity in the community, and the media and the opposition were at fault. What a disgraceful response by this Premier, who single-handedly, as Premier, was responsible for this misguided step that has been of such detriment and damage to our children. The Premier was asked today if he stood by his reforms, and he said yes, he did. But they're going to change it anyway, because clearly the pressure, with the Royal Commissioner adding her voice to the weight of the principals' organisations and even the Education Union and almost all of the education commentators who have agreed with the opposition since our call in 2013 for Families SA to be removed, the Premier was finally forced to make it happen. But even today, he said he still stood by his initial statements that bringing them together was a good idea. This is a move that the Premier has been forced to make that he doesn't believe in. And then when we were asking the Premier when he would be bringing in the Commissioner for Children and Young People, the other reform first suggested in 2003 as part of the Leighton Review 13 years ago, and also committed to by the Premier and the government in 2013, still not in existence. The opposition's playing politics was his excuse for why that hasn't happened. The Premier then said that the other reason why there had been delays was because all of those other reviews, Mulligan and DeBell and Leighton and the Chloe Valentine Royal Commission and, the Chloe Valentine Coronial Inquest, and all of those inquests, all of those catalogues of tragedy and trauma, he said that none of them had suggested that this step was necessary. And the Premier does so knowing full well that it is necessary because he created this mega department, this Department of Education and Child Protection, where education is unable to get the full power and impact of a minister focused on that, and child protection is unable to be the lead agency that it deserves to be so that it can have its focus. The Premier says that nobody had ever suggested child protection needed to be removed from the Education Department before. Mulligan and Leighton, of course, were years before the Premier had even put them together. The opposition was calling on this for years. The stakeholder groups were calling on this for years. The government has finally stepped up, but does so begrudgingly. The Premier should be apologising for what he has done to this area over the last 5 years of his leadership.
Member for Ghana.